One moment of peace can heal an hour's worth of stress. Don't feel guilty for being at peace. Your peace is the best service that anyone could ever hope to have from you. Because that is where the love goes through. And your peace shall become the peace of others. Take one final breath and return. So, many of us have read or heard references to the Greek mythological tale of Pandora's box. Few of us, knowing its origins, use the expression of a Pandora's box to reference all manner of unwitting disobedience resulting in evil outcomes. But there's more to this story and its tellings over the centuries, and yet more which may be learned by looking at it from a different perspective. So the ancient Greek poet Hesiod is credited with creating the character of Pandora, mainly because his is the first known references to her. It's quite possible, and I contend likely, that she existed in mythology before that. Pandora was the mythological first woman, created by the gods with exceptional beauty, talent, and intellect. Even her name means the all-gifted one. According to Hesiod, Pandora was created solely for the purpose of punishing humanity for accepting Prometheus' stolen gift of fire. In the story, as it's been handed down to us, Zeus sent Pandora to Earth with a box containing all of the evils of the world and which she was instructed not to open. Her husband, Epimetheus, held the key, but not for long. While he slept, Pandora took the key and opened the box. All the evils of the world were released before she could hastily close the lid again. She felt regret. But looking again inside the box, she saw that hope remained. And that's the end of the tale. We are left to interpret on our own what moral to take from it. And there are several points which invite further examination, however. For a start, in Hesiod's poem, it was a jar, not a box. That we refer to it today as Pandora's box rather than Pandora's jar is the result of a 16th century mistranslation. Funny how that happens. But knowing the original vessel was a pithos rather than a pyxis helps us to understand a bit more about the intent behind the meaning of the container in the tale. A pithos is the size of a small human. In it, they would store wine, olive oil, other goods, but they were also used as containers for a body in preparation for burial. In looking at the origin story of Pandora, at least as we know it, she was made from the same clay used to make those vessels. As well, her alternate name, Anisidora, means one who sends up gifts from below. Pandora herself is the vessel of gifts for humanity. Next to be considered is that hope still existed in the bottom of the vessel and remained after all the evil had fled. Why was it there in the first place? What made Zeus include hope in the jar with all of the evils? According to the mythology, the entire divine exercise was meant solely to punish humanity and was done as an act of vengeance. So why the hope? Pessimistic interpretations conclude that hope remained as a final torment. A closer examination of Greek storytelling tradition reveals a much more complicated concept than merely the word hope. What was actually remaining in the jar was not the concept of hope, but a being named Elpis. Elpis, whose name in Greek means hope and expectation, was seen as an extension of suffering by the Greeks, a personification and spirit of hope depicted as a young woman typically carrying flowers. The ancient Greeks automatically included hope as a component of suffering, and so in the creation of this seemingly tragic tale, Elpis would naturally be present in the jar along with her counterpart suffering. To the Greeks, they were conceptually entangled. They needed one another. Which might make us wonder about our imagining of the nature of Zeus and his intent behind sending Pandora, a woman created with perfection and blessing, down to earth with a vessel he would have known she couldn't help but to open. This is where Hesiod's literal hatred of women and the woes among men he believes women are solely responsible for comes in. For it's more likely, when we consider the Greek perspective, that it was Pandora's task to open it all along. Not out of punishment. For Zeus could have managed that without creating an exceptional person to do it. But for a bigger purpose. And who better but the perfect creation to release a difficult but necessary curriculum of benevolence upon the earth. I think it all comes down to the nature of our perception in transcribing these tales. Was Zeus, as a precursor to the modern view of God, truly angry or attempting to accomplish a bigger objective? Was there benevolence there? I don't mean to appear that I'm concluding Greek mythology to be factually true. For that matter, I don't include the Bible to be all factually true either. But when we look at these texts through an open heart, we find there is genuine wisdom and insight to be had. Sometimes that insight is into the mind of the person or people who transcribed these stories and what their worldviews might have been, and what we might be thinking or perhaps intuiting when writing them. I believe Hesiod's worldview, revealed through the story of Pandora and of Zeus, for that matter, was that of an earth watched over by a vengeful higher power, which we see in the Old Testament too. A perfect world was created by the gods, and men roamed the earth free of troubles, and they had prosperity, and all was well when it was just guys. But then the first women was created and went and wrecked it all. Sounds a lot like the Christian view of the Old Testament God of Abraham. The creation story and Eve. How dare she? But is this really how God was, is? Or simply how we perceived God based on our suffering? Were we making literary assumptions about the nature of God and women simply because our lives are so painful and difficult and we needed something to account for it, someone to blame, a convenient scapegoat? What if God never was vengeful? Just look that way. For all we know, God could only entrust women with such a delicate and important task as launching the human classroom for our eventual ascension toward peace. For we gain compassion through our hardships and suffering. We learn to communicate and rely upon one another through our trials. How do we know that the purpose of the jar's contents wasn't to accomplish compassion? For how else do we come by it? Nobody comes around waving a magic wand and telling us, you must be compassionate, and then we go, oh good, thank you for letting me know. Unfortunately, we know how humans learn compassion and empathy, and it is not easy. My theology assumes that ancient mythology and scripture both have seeds in cosmic truth intuited, and then, of course, interpreted by their original human transcribers. I don't assume that those interpretations were always spot on, even if the cosmic truth that they were intuiting might have been. The transcribers were human after all, and they were suffering. What were the various successive authors of Pandora's story intuiting? Were they intuiting the benevolence of God but interpreting it as punishment? That wouldn't surprise me. We do that today. How many out there have concluded that the pandemic was a punishment from God, for example? But the God I believe in does not function that way. Only humans function that way. What if the mythological Zeus knew exactly what he was doing? What if Zeus was forgiving of the nature of humanity in allowing and even depending upon Pandora's exceptional curiosity to guarantee the jar eventually being opened? This makes her more of an emissary than a punishment. Why would Zeus need to go through all of that theater to simply release evil into the world anyway? My guess is because there's more here than meets the eye. I think we should assume benevolence. And if God/Zeus was acting out of love, the goal of Pandora and the contents of the jar were not a punishment at all, but something more purposeful. It's easy to see how a fearful worldview would assume that the actions of God are done to make us suffer, and are then transcribed into tradition as such. But a lack of benevolence is a human assumption, and one which assumes it understands the mind of God in the first place. Reframing Zeus as benevolent gives us permission in the Pandora story to consider that not all is quite as it appears. Elpis, the being of hope and expectation, was possibly not trapped in the jar, but remained to help us understand what has befallen us, and not just to survive and experience, but through hope and expectation to grow from it. Take upon yourself the actions and purpose of Elpis. Be an instrument of hope and expectation at this time. Model the non-anxious presence for others, and it will help ease your own fears. There is benevolence here that we have not been seeing. Call to it now. Hail and be welcomed. Our closing hymn is number 142, Let There Be Light. Please rise as you are able, and then remain standing for the words to carry with us in the benediction.
us found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
May you go forth from this place with courage and love and purpose. May you remember there is so much more to you than it appears, and that the sufferings we experience have hidden within them a nugget of helpness. Go forth and be exceedingly well.
Spin you all around today. Actually, I can't hear you though, so that's not really going to help me all that much. Let's see, can I hear you? No, because if I turn the volume on, it's going to go bad. So, anyway, as I was saying in the chat, I don't know if you all have your chat open, but we're thinking about trying to move to a live stream on YouTube as opposed to doing the Zoom. We're also going to be changing the camera out for a new camera. We've upgraded our internet service, so it's a faster upload speed now, so that may be, I know Sue McComb, you mentioned you had better audio today. That may be why. And we have the recording from last week. Speaking of that, let me stop recording this week.